Alam Laba, hello everyone, and welcome back to our weekly news program from MMTV. We will be covering global interest and the latest developments related to the Myanmar situation, including significant news and events from the past week. We will also provide updates on the current difficulties faced domestically and the conditions within Myanmar. I'm Quentin Covington, and I will be presenting the news from this past week. Let's begin with the news highlights. Union Prime Minister Myanmar has provided assistance to flood-affected citizens. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs under the National Unity Government, or NUG, continues to deliver emergency food and medical aid to flood-affected people. Federal Wings sold a rugged laptop for $1,000 to raise funds for flood relief, and the buyer donated it back to the cause. The NUCC has issued a statement regarding flood relief efforts. Myanmar ranks second in fatalities due to the recent storm, with the highest number of missing persons. The NUG and ethnic armed organizations have called on the international community for assistance for flood victims. South Korea and India have started providing assistance to flood-affected Myanmar. The World Food Programme, or WFP, announced plans to assist cyclone victims in Myanmar. The military junta has restricted flood relief efforts in Kaya and Bago. The AAPP reports that the death toll from the Spring Revolution has reached 5,666. Now, let's go into more detail on each of these headlines. Union Prime Minister Myanmar of the National Unity Government has been actively providing support to citizens affected by Typhoon Yagi. This support includes emergency rescue operations, urgent evacuations, and the provisions of emergency food supplies to areas impacted by flooding. A donation amount of 9,570,000 jet, or 66,000 baht, has been made to facilitate these relief efforts. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs under the National Unity Government continues to deliver emergency food and medical aid to flood-affected people. On September 18th, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management of the NUG announced that it is coordinating with local district officials to provide assistance to residents in areas currently affected by flooding. This assistance includes emergency rescue operations, urgent evacuations to safer locations, and the provision of food and essential supplies. To ensure the prompt delivery of emergency humanitarian aid and healthcare services to residents in flood-affected areas, the People's Defense Force township committees, health officials, and humanitarian coordinators are collaboratively coordinating their efforts. The ministry highlighted their ongoing program, direct assistance to the people, and compassionate actions to manage donations and ensure they reach those affected by the floods. Federal Wings Drone Force sold one of their specialty-designed rugged laptops for $1,000 to support flood relief efforts. This laptop, designed and tested for drone operations, is waterproof and durable for rugged conditions in military use. The buyer generously donated the laptop back to the cause, and Federal Wings stated that the laptop was sold at 4 times its original value to contribute to flood relief efforts. The NUCC has issued a statement regarding flood relief efforts. On September 17th, the National Unity Consultative Council, or NUCC, issued a statement expressing condolences to those killed and affected by the devastating flash floods and landslides. They condemned the military junta for failing to provide assistance and for their continued bombings and killings of civilians during the natural disasters. The NUCC praised the resilience of the Myanmar people, highlighting their mutual support amidst hardships. The statement urged the United Nations, ASEAN, and the international community to not overlook the urgent needs of the people facing both war and natural disasters. The NUCC called for immediate cross-border humanitarian assistance in cooperation with the National Unity Government, ethnic resistance organizations, and civil society groups. They emphasized that aid should be delivered fairly and equitably and not be exploited for political or military gain. The NUCC urged the international community to provide both short-term emergency aid and long-term support for reconstruction and development, ensuring the humanitarian needs of the people are met. They called on everyone to remain united against the junta's oppression and continue supporting each other through these challenging times. Myanmar ranks second in fatalities due to the recent storm, with the highest number of missing persons. Typhoon Yagi, originating from the South China Sea and making landfall in Vietnam, has caused severe flooding and landslides in southern China, the Philippines, Laos, Thailand, and Myanmar. As of September 17th, there have been 266 confirmed deaths across 15 townships in 6 regions and states in Myanmar, with over 200 people still missing. The actual numbers may be higher on the ground. On September 16th, the military junta reported that 226 individuals had lost their lives and 77 were missing nationwide due to the flooding. Meanwhile, international reports indicate that Vietnam reported 992 deaths and 38 missing persons from the typhoon, while other affected countries saw only about a dozen fatalities. Myanmar has the highest number of missing persons and the second highest death toll, which is largely attributed to the military junta's failure to support civilian relief organizations. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or UNOCHA, reported on September 16th that more than 631,000 people across 59 townships in 9 regions and states in Myanmar have been affected by the floods. The junta's lack of effective support has further exacerbated the crisis, leading to significant loss of life and damage. The NUG and ethnic armed organizations, or EAOs, have called on the international community for assistance for flood victims. On September 17th, the NUG's Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, along with the Karen National Union, KNU, the Karenni National Progressive Party, KNPP, and the Chin National Front, CNF, issued a joint statement urging the international community, the United Nations, and ASEAN to provide emergency humanitarian aid for Myanmar citizens affected by Typhoon Yagi. The statement highlighted the urgent need for food, drinking water, hygiene products, medical care, and infrastructure rebuilding in the flood-affected areas of Shan, Kaya, Chin, and Karen states, as well as the Mandalay, Bago, Sagaing, and Magway regions. They emphasized that aid must be distributed fairly and equitably through responsible NUG ministries, ethnic resistance organizations, and civil society groups to avoid political or military exploitation. The NUG and EAOs also called for both short-term emergency support and long-term assistance for reconstruction and development, stressing the need for international aid to be directed to the people most in need through trusted channels. South Korea and India have started providing assistance to flood-affected Myanmar. On September 16th, the South Korean embassy in Myanmar announced that $13 million would be allocated for humanitarian assistance to support the people affected by the floods. The aid will be delivered through international organizations like the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance, or AHA Center, and the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UNOCHA. Similarly, India's Foreign Minister, Jai Shankar, announced on Facebook that India would send dry food, clothing, and medical supplies to Myanmar. An Indian Navy vessel carrying 10 tons of aid departed from Myanmar on September 15th. The UNOCHA reported on September 16th that more than 631,000 people across Myanmar could be affected by flooding. Both countries have pledged continued support to assist the flood-stricken communities in Myanmar. The World Food Programme announced plans to assist cyclone victims in Myanmar. On September 18th, the WFP announced that it would significantly expand aid to those impacted by Typhoon Yagi in Myanmar. The WFP has been providing flood response assistance since July, but the recent announcement highlighted the need for increased support. Due to Typhoon Yagi, which struck on September 11th, regions such as Naypyidaw, Karen, Kaya, Bago, Magway, Mandalay, Mon, and Shan states have experienced severe flooding and landslides, affecting over 700,000 people nationwide. The WFP plans to distribute 1 month's worth of food supplies, including rice, fortified biscuits, and nutritional support to approximately 500,000 flood-affected individuals. They are also assessing the impact on agriculture, livelihoods, and food security in the affected areas. The organizations described this flooding as one of the worst in Myanmar's recent history and emphasized the devastating impact on food security, with more than 13 million people already facing food insecurity before the floods. The military junta has restricted flood relief efforts in Kaya and Bago. The military junta has been blocking the delivery of aid to over 30,000 displaced persons in Kaya and Bago regions, severely hampering relief efforts. Areas such as Loikau, Demoso, Pruso, and Peko townships in Kaya State, as well as parts of southern Shan State, have been particularly affected, with flood victims unable to receive necessary aid. Despite repeated requests for assistance, the junta has continued to restrict access, preventing aid from reaching those in need. Reports indicate that since September 6th, heavy rainfall and the overflow of the Mobia Dam have caused extensive flooding, leading to severe difficulties for the affected populations. More than 100,000 people in these areas are in urgent need of food, water, and shelter, but the junta's restrictions have made it nearly impossible for international and local humanitarian organizations to deliver aid effectively. The AAPP reports that the death toll from the Spring Revolution has reached 5,666. According to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, or AAPP, as of September 18, 2024, 5,666 people have been killed since the military coup in February of 2021. The report also states that 27,398 people have been arrested during this period, with 20,908 still detained and 9,423 sentenced to prison terms. The actual figures may be higher due to unreported cases. The AAPP continues to document these cases and urges anyone with information about deaths or detentions to contact them via email. The organization stressed the need for international awareness and action to address the ongoing human rights violations and to support the fight for democracy and justice in Myanmar. These have been the key highlights of this week's news. Myanmar people continue to strive for democracy and human rights in various ways every day. Therefore, we urge all people and countries worldwide to support the reform of democracy and fundamental human rights in Myanmar. My name is Quentin Covington. Thank you for watching MMTV News. Stay tuned for more updates, and we'll see you again next week.